he said, "What's your name, soldier?" And now I don't remember what I told him my name was, but it definitely wasn't Haar. And none of us had name tags on at that point. And when we fell into the formation, I fell in way in the back, but not exactly in the back. And so they called out all the orders, and then there's this little joker up there with his clipboard. And he gets with the guy with the microphone, and the guy with the microphone, he says, "Okay, private," whatever the name was that I gave. I don't remember what the name was. But it wasn't Haar, I can tell you that. And you fall out here on the double. Now, I'm sure that little corporal had something delicious lined up for me to do. But nobody fell out. And he could have found me. He could have found me if he would have been willing to walk up and down those files. And there must have been 500 of us standing there. And he could have found me if he would have been willing to expend the effort, but he wasn't. And then they assigned everyone to details. Mm-hmm. They had the latrine detail you had these barrels that went in the sides of the latrines, and you took those out and you stacked them up, poured good old funky fuel oil on those, and set them on fire. And then it didn't burn completely, as you can imagine. You had to dump those into a trench that you dug in the sand, and they had little signs there where the stuff had been buried, and it went right down the line. It looked like a graveyard there.
Oh my
And, that sounds pretty undesirable, but there were a lot of things undesirable in Vietnam. I remember they assigned me to the motor pool. And I was down there breaking down tires and pulling transmissions, and I was hoping they were going to keep me. My guess is that I'm not the only person that ever tried that. And it didn't work. My orders was that I was 11B, which is light weapons infantry. And to be an infantryman there's a hard to understand pride involved with that, but no one wants to pay the price involved. Because I can tell you that if you were non-infantry, you don't really know. You don't know how bad it can get. And people don't know that, and it's a blessing that they don't know that.
Well, some don't know that because of people like you that take that responsibility. So obviously, I'm assuming you saw combat.
Yeah.
Can you kind of describe some of that and what areas and?
Well, they sent me from Cam Ranh Bay. They sent me to Chu Lai. Chu Lai had a place called the Combat Center, and it was one additional week of training before you were actually assigned to a unit. And this 1 week of training included some weapons training and some land navigation and stuff like that. And at the end of this training, there was a for real live ammunition ambush patrol. Initially, I had orders that was supposed to go to the 196th Light Infantry Brigade, which was another part of the Americal Division. Americal Division had 3 infantry brigades: the 11th, the 198th, and the 196th. The 196th is an ass-kicking outfit. I'd never heard of the 11th. But at the last minute, they changed my orders and they sent me to the 11th. And they took us up to over the ocean with I think it was what they used to call a caribou, which is an airplane, and it landed in Doc Pho, and that's where the company was based, Doc Pho. And as I say, it was Company B, 3rd Battalion, 1st Infantry, 11th Infantry Brigade. And I remember I got to there, and there was a guy in the supply room, and his name was Stone. And he had a big scar on his cheek. Nasty looking scar on his cheek. And he handed me my rifle and the rest of my uniform stuff, and he gave me my pair of boots. And at this point I only had one pair of boots. And he said, the Army issued you one pair of boots, but you have to actually pay for the second pair of boots. Well, I was just a little too wise to fall for that one, and I said, well, with all due respect, Sergeant, if I have to pay for the second pair of boots, I'm just going to pass, and you can just keep those. And he said, oh, I'm just kidding you, and he gave me the boots. But I have no idea. He may have actually got some money out of other people. I was a little too wise for that. And they sent me out to LZ Liz, which was, I don't know, a couple of miles to the north of Doc Fo. And the next day there was a CA. A CA is a combat assault. It's a helicopter ride. And let's see. I have to tell you that my life, there was before that day, and then there was after that day. That day out on the beach, there I am. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. These guys here, they've got those deep suntans. Their boots look like they came off the devil himself. And they were tough beyond anything that you can imagine. They were just like a whole different thing. We landed there, and we were making our way through there, and there was a big whooshing sound, and it looked like fireworks up in the trees, and I was some distance away. And then the guys, they started yelling. They started screaming. And I didn't know any of those people's names, and they, there I am in my new uniform, and there they are in their beat all to hell, sun-bleached uniforms, and there was a guy who was staggering around in a circle, and his name was, I found out at the reunion, at the time I had no idea what his name was. His name was Bobby Clanfier, and he had triggered a white phosphorus artillery shell that had been booby-trapped. And it burned him bad. And it was like the back of his neck was like sizzling. It looked like it was boiling. And he was staggering around in a circle, and he kept screaming, an unearthly scream, and he kept screaming, "God damn you, Charlie, I'm going to get you for this." But he never got anybody, because in a few minutes he was dead. And there was a guy by the name, also down there, his name was Brad Newell. I found out this at the reunion too, because as I say, the day, I had no idea what anyone's name was. No one wore name tags. And that WP burned a hole through the side of his head the size of a golf ball. And every year at the reunion, I always tell him he cheated death that day. And it was a hell of an introduction to the infantry, and I kept telling myself, you are in hell. And as I say, there was my life before that. And then there was my life after that. And it remains the most awful thing I'd ever seen.
That first day? First day.
And I remember, like, the second day, we're on a patrol, and somebody yells up there, "Don't anybody move!" And I knew what that meant. They'd encountered mines. And they'd actually found one, and it actually disarmed the thing. And, I remember during the Gulf War, somebody asked General Schwarzkopf whether there had been fewer mines than they had anticipated. And General Schwarzkopf looked at the guy and he said, "Have you ever been in a minefield?" The reporter said, "No." And he said, "One mine is an intense experience."
One is one too many.
Yeah. That business with Clanfiera, I still dream about that. And I still remember it so vividly. And I remember there were civilians there going about their business less than 150 feet away. And you realize those little bastards planted that mine.
Yeah.
Or even if they didn't, they knew it was there. And they're going about their business. Just as if like nothing had happened.
Just waiting.
And they seem like, like they look a lot more innocent on television. And when you're there, they look like zombies. Honestly, they look like zombies. It's an intense experience. It's hard to explain those things. It's one of those things where you had to have been there, I guess. I wouldn't recommend that to anyone.
Yeah. Okay. Can you talk a little bit about your injuries that you received while you were over there?
Well, the first time I was wounded was an ambush patrol, and we'd set this line up, and I could hear this jingle, and it sounded exactly like a U.S. Army rifle sling jingle, and they have all kinds of buckles and things which make all kinds of damn noise. Not the best design, and it seemed like it was not that far away, and I ended up, if we fired at it, they'd see the muzzle flashes and they'd know exactly where our position was. So I threw a hand grenade out there, and boom! I hear it hit the ground out there, boom! And it was out in the South China Sea, and curiously enough, there's pine trees there, and one of the pieces of the hand grenade hit me on the left shoulder and one on the right shoulder. And the one that hit me in the right shoulder actually hurt more, but that was just burned me. The one on the left shoulder went in there about 1.5 inches. But we didn't hear any more of that night. I was glad nobody else got hit. I assumed guard duty for the rest of the night because I wasn't likely to go to sleep anyway. And the next morning, the company commander wanted to see it, so I went over there and I held up my shirt sleeve. I was just wearing a T-shirt, and he said, "Dust him off." So the helicopter came in and took me out, took me back to Doc Fo, and they just put a Band-Aid on it. The fragment is still in there.
It's still in there today?
Oh yeah. The M26 hand grenade it was like a spring inside. It was partially cut every so far, and it resulted in these little semicircles of metal. And one of those is still in there.
Do you still feel anything from it? Or
No, it's in too too deep. I actually got a piece of my forehead that I can feel, but that put it in there later. Mm-hmm. Chambers has got one that he can actually stand up.
And move around?
Yeah, he can push on it and it stands up there. Then he pushes on it and it flops back down.
Just doesn't cause enough trouble to get taken out.
No. Chambers is a heck of a nice guy. But the first time I was wounded was not too serious. So that I can tell you that hand grenades that hurt like hell. But and it became mildly infected. That was that happened on the 10th of it was the 13th of August. 10 days later is when I got really wounded.